The morning sun reflected brightly off the marble steps of City Hall, giving the old building an almost regal glow. Clerks, aides, and citizens moved briskly in and out through the tall glass doors, their conversations blending into a steady hum of civic life. The place buzzed with routine, paperwork filed, meetings scheduled, voices echoing faintly beneath the high ceilings. Among the crowd, a tall black woman in her 40s climbed the steps with measured grace. She wore a tailored burgundy suit, the kind that spoke of quiet authority, and carried a sleek leather portfolio under one arm. Her heels clicked sharply against the stone as she ascended, drawing brief glances from passers-by. When she entered the main hall, the polished floors reflected her figure beneath soaring columns. She walked with purpose, not pausing at the information desk or looking around like a visitor. Instead, her eyes were focused, her stride steady. She knew exactly where she was going. For her, this building was not an intimidating landmark or a maze of offices. It was a place she knew intimately, a place where she belonged. Every turn of the corridor, every echo of her footsteps on the marble tiles only reinforced her calm confidence, and yet, as she made her way deeper into City Hall, she could already feel a few curious eyes following her. The kind of glances that weren't just curiosity, but quiet questions about who she was and why she carried herself with such assurance. She didn't stop to explain, she didn't need to. What she didn't know, however, was that one of those glances would soon sharpen into suspicion and spark a confrontation that would silence the entire building. Across the marble hall, Karen Davis stood impatiently near the information desk. Mid-50s, dressed in a pastel cardigan and clutching a monogrammed handbag, she tapped her toe with just enough force to let everyone know she was waiting. Her tone with the clerk had already been sharp. She was there to follow up on a complaint about local zoning violations and made sure everyone around her knew it. As Karen adjusted her sunglasses on her head, she noticed the black woman walk through the entrance like she owned the place. No hesitation, no check-in, no deference. Just calm, confident strides, straight past the front desk and down the central corridor. Karen narrowed her eyes. "Excuse me?" she muttered under her breath, nudging the man next to her in line. Did she just walk in without checking in? The man blinked, unsure how to respond, and turned away uncomfortably. But Karen wasn't done. Her eyes stayed fixed on the woman in the burgundy suit as she disappeared around the corner. Her sense of discomfort quickly turned into indignation. "She just walked in like she owns the place," Karen hissed. "You can't just waltz into City Hall like that." The clerk behind the desk, overhearing her, tried to respond politely. "Ma'am, a lot of people who work here don't have to sign in." But Karen wasn't listening anymore. She was already turning, clutching her handbag tighter, eyes burning with a self-righteous sense of duty. "I've seen this before," she said to no one in particular. "People sneaking into government buildings, acting like they belong here when they don't." With a final glare and a huff, Karen marched across the lobby, heels clacking, headed in the same direction as the woman in burgundy, determined to get to the bottom of it. She didn't ask a single question. She didn't consider another explanation. She just followed her assumption and headed straight for a moment she would never live down. The woman in the burgundy suit reached a side hallway lined with framed portraits of past city leaders. Her heels echoed lightly as she walked, her eyes briefly scanning the walls, taking note of the faces, some familiar, some long gone. She stopped in front of a meeting room door, checked her watch, and began to retrieve a key card from her jacket pocket. Before she could unlock the door, a sharp voice cut through the air behind her. "Excuse me! Excuse me!" She turned slowly. Karen approached with stiff shoulders and a face full of judgment, her arms crossed tightly over her chest. Her voice was loud enough to draw attention from two clerks down the hall, who paused what they were doing. "You can't just walk around in here like this," Karen said, pointing vaguely at the woman's shoes, suit, and portfolio, as if they were somehow criminal. "This is a government building. You don't belong in these areas unless you're escorted or—" The woman blinked once, calm. "Is there a problem?" Karen scoffed. "Yes. The problem is you. You didn't check in at the front desk. You're not wearing a badge. And I highly doubt you have any business being in this wing." Several people nearby began to look on. A security guard stationed by the elevator shifted his weight and started walking toward the commotion. One of the clerks furrowed their brow, but didn't move. The woman took a slow breath, choosing her words carefully. I'm right where I need to be. But Karen only grew more defensive. Look, I don't care who you think you are. If you don't leave this hallway right now, I'm calling security. This is exactly how people get away with things, pretending like they're important. The woman's jaw tensed slightly, not from anger, from disappointment. Karen was too wrapped in her indignation to notice. You're going to be in real trouble if you don't turn around right now, she warned, taking a step closer. You can't just walk in here and pretend you're. Then, behind them, a door opened. Mayor Daniels, a man's voice called warmly. A staffer in a city employee badge stepped into the hallway. The council's ready for you. Karen froze. Mayor? She whispered, eyes flicking from the staffer to the black woman in front of her. The woman offered a faint smile and stepped past Karen toward the door. That's right, she said quietly. I'm Mayor Evelyn Daniels. The hallway fell silent. Karen didn't move. She couldn't. Karen stood rooted to the polished marble floor, her mouth slightly open, her face drained of color. She turned slowly, watching as the black woman she had just berated stepped confidently through the double doors labeled Mayor's Conference Room. The staffer held the door open, bowing his head respectfully as Mayor Daniels passed by. Inside, murmurs of greeting rang out from a dozen seated city council members. Some stood when they saw her enter. She nodded back with grace, settling at the head of the long oak table, her nameplate already in place. From the hallway, Karen could see everything. She could see that no one questioned the mayor's presence. No one asked for her ID. No one tried to escort her out. Because here, in this building, she was the one in charge. The security guard who had started walking over paused beside Karen, giving her a curious glance. Is there a problem, ma'am? Karen swallowed hard. No, she muttered. I must have been mistaken. The guard gave her a look, one that said he'd seen this kind of thing before, then turned and returned to his post. Nearby, the clerks whispered to each other, shaking their heads, now fully aware of what had happened. Karen's eyes darted around, looking for an exit that wouldn't make her walk past the open conference room. But it was too late. The damage had been done, not just in front of the staff, but in front of herself. She had revealed her assumptions, exposed her prejudice, and the worst part, she had done it loudly. Inside the room, Mayor Daniels took her seat, opened her portfolio, and began speaking about the city's upcoming infrastructure plan. Her voice was calm, articulate, and full of command. She never once looked back. She didn't need to. Karen lingered near the hallway for a few awkward moments, unsure of whether to flee or recover. She could hear the murmur of voices from inside the conference room, the occasional laughter or shuffle of papers. It felt like a wall of sound that excluded her completely. Not just from the room, but from the reality she now had to face. She slowly turned and made her way back to the lobby, clutching her handbag tightly against her chest. Her footsteps were hesitant this time, no longer clicking with indignation but dragging with embarrassment. The energy she had walked in with had vanished. By the time she reached the reception desk again, the young clerk behind it didn't even try to hide his smirk. I trust you found who you were looking for, he asked, tone neutral but eyes amused. Karen forced a smile. Yes, I just didn't realize, the clerk tilted his head, that the mayor doesn't need to check in? Karen didn't answer. She simply turned away, face flushed. But instead of leaving the building entirely, something made her pause, a twinge of guilt, or perhaps a desperate need to salvage her dignity. Whatever it was, she turned and asked, Is there a way I could leave a note? The clerk raised an eyebrow. For the mayor? Karen nodded. Yes, I may have misjudged her. I think she should know that I didn't mean. She already knows, the clerk said gently but firmly. She's had people like you try to talk down to her before. And she's still here. Karen looked down. Her fingers fumbled as she pulled out a pen from her purse. A few minutes later, she handed over a neatly folded note. It read only one sentence. I'm sorry for assuming you didn't belong, when you clearly belong more than anyone here. She didn't sign her name. The clerk took the note without comment. Karen nodded stiffly and walked out of City Hall, the heels that once echoed with arrogance now muffled by humility. Back in the conference room, Mayor Evelyn Daniels reviewed the zoning reports spread out before her. The city council discussion had shifted to pedestrian safety and upcoming budget approvals, but her thoughts drifted briefly, back to the hallway. She hadn't flinched when the woman confronted her, not because she was used to it, though she was, but because years of experience had taught her the value of restraint, of not letting moments like that derail her focus. She knew that dignity wasn't something given, it was something claimed. A quiet knock came at the conference room door. Her assistant slipped in with a folded note. "Someone left this for you, Mayor." From the woman in the hallway, Evelyn took it without a word, unfolded it slowly. She read the single sentence. "I'm sorry for assuming you didn't belong, when you clearly belong more than anyone here." She stared at it for a few seconds, then set it aside. Her chief of staff leaned over and asked, "Everything okay?" Evelyn gave a small smile. "Yes, just another lesson." The staffer tilted his head. "What kind of lesson?" She folded her hands together. "That the people who try to diminish you often come from a place of fear, not power. And when they realize you do belong, that you're leading, they don't know how to react." She looked around the room, filled with colleagues, many of whom had once doubted her too. "I don't need to teach her anything," Evelyn continued softly. "Life already did." She returned her focus to the meeting and continued with her agenda, voice steady, clear, and measured. The note stayed on the edge of her binder, untouched but not ignored, like a reminder of how far she'd come and how much farther she would still go. The council meeting wrapped just after noon. As Mayor Evelyn Daniels exited the conference room, several staff members lined the hallway, offering polite nods and soft greetings. She moved with quiet confidence, the kind earned through a lifetime of being underestimated and rising anyway. But this time, something had shifted in the building. Word had spread, not just about the morning's confrontation, but about how Evelyn had handled it. No grand speeches, no revenge, just grace. A young intern approached her timidly in the hallway. "Mayor Daniels?" "I just wanted to say, thank you." Evelyn paused. "For what?" "For being who you are. For showing the rest of us that we can get there too, no matter how many people try to stop us." Evelyn gave her a long, thoughtful look. "Don't let them define your place." "Ever." The intern nodded, visibly moved. Meanwhile, Karen, now sitting silently in the public gallery upstairs, had stayed for the entire session. She hadn't planned to, but something compelled her. She watched the mayor's every move, the respect in the room, the way officials deferred to her expertise. For the first time, Karen saw Evelyn not as someone breaking rules, but as someone writing them. And that realization stung more than the embarrassment. It was humbling. When Evelyn walked past the gallery stairs, she glanced upward. Their eyes met briefly. Karen didn't wave. She didn't speak. She just nodded. And to her quiet surprise, the mayor nodded back. It wasn't forgiveness. It wasn't permission. It was simply a moment, a powerful acknowledgement of change. That day, City Hall felt different. The staff moved with more purpose. The interns asked more questions. People looked at Mayor Daniels not just as a leader, but as a symbol of resilience, of justice, of calm power in the face of ignorance. And somewhere in that same building, the note remained folded in a drawer, a small, wrinkled reminder that progress wasn't always loud. Sometimes it walked in wearing heels and a burgundy suit and didn't need to explain itself to anyone.